So today I'll be continuing with my schedule discussion and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing Iowa State. I haven't done a lot of research yet on Iowa State's roster. I'll have to do a lot more before I do a game by game prediction video for them. But my early thoughts about them are they'll probably be about how they usually are this year. They've become a program that is usually decent and wins 7 or 8 games a season, usually, but it never is great. And I've never seen them win their conference. And to me, that's about how they'll probably be this year. I don't really see them as being a possibility to win the Big 12, but uh, I do think they'll have a, a good chance to pull an upset on a team that's supposed to be better than them this year. I don't know who that would be, but I could see them getting one upset against someone like that this year. Uh, and this schedule isn't horrible. Uh, mm, so in the non-conference, they get 2 games that should be real easy wins for them against North Dakota and Arkansas State. Arkansas State will probably be a little tougher than North Dakota will be, but they should both be uh, easy wins. But Iowa State did lose to Ohio last year, so they will have to still be careful in games like these. And they uh, have Iowa, their in-state rival in the non-conference, who they play every year on the road. I don't really see very many points being scored in that one. It'll probably be a close one. Iowa's probably a little better than Iowa State, but if Iowa's offense isn't any better, uh, they could get beat by anybody. They could uh, for sure get beat by Iowa State if they're still like that. But uh, I do think that Iowa State will have a good chance to win this one. And then they take their first week off before playing Arkansas State. Not really a time that mm, is good to take a week off. Mm, and then they started the conference schedule on the road at Houston. This will probably be a challenge for them. Uh, I've looked a lot at Houston's roster, and it's not terrible. They, I think, could be better this year. Of course, that Houston doesn't have a great home field advantage, but this is one that uh, Iowa State could for sure lose. But I think they probably are a little better than Houston. And if I was gonna pick it now, I'd pick Iowa State. Uh, and then they play Baylor, a game that right now you think that Iowa State could probably win, but Baylor, I have a feeling is going to be better, probably quite a bit better than they were last year. So I would expect this to be a challenge for Iowa State. And then they play West Virginia on the road. That's going to be tough for Iowa State to win, uh, but not impossible. West Virginia is supposed to be pretty good again, and uh, they're a pretty tough place to play. And then they play Central Florida, uh, a very winnable game for Iowa State. But Central Florida, I've looked into their roster, and it looks to me like they could be pretty good. Uh, so probably will be a tough one. Uh, and then we take a week off before playing Texas Tech. I guess that's a pretty good time for a week off because Central Florida isn't going to be an easy game. And then uh, Texas Tech after it is probably going to be a tough one too. Uh, and uh, then they play Kansas, and I've got it on the road because uh, it's going to be one of Kansas's places where they'll play their home games at this year. But if you don't know, Kansas doesn't have a real home field advantage this year because they're redoing their uh, home stadium. Uh, and Kansas, I think, probably a little better than Iowa State, and this is going to be tough for Iowa State to win. But uh, mm, uh, these two games against West Virginia and Kansas will be opportunities for Iowa State to get a upset this year, I think. And then they play Cincinnati. They really should win that one. Cincinnati, I've said a bunch, is uh, terrible. And then they play Utah on the road. Now, this is the uh, least likely game to me for Iowa State to be able to win because Utah, I think, is for sure going to be at least the second best team in the conference this year. Right now, I think they'll probably be the best, and it's on the road, and Utah's a pretty tough place to play. Uh, and then they play Kansas State at home, and I think the Kansas State probably has a little better roster overall than Iowa State, but Iowa State actually beat them last year at Kansas State, and now Kansas State is losing their quarterback, and I wasn't impressed at all with their new quarterback that I watched in the bowl game as a passer. Uh, so I think Iowa State will have a really good chance to win that one. And some good news about this schedule is they don't have to play Oklahoma State, who is probably going to be similar to Utah this year. So now I'll move on to the point spread prediction. Mm, so, if you want to see more about how I do these, you can watch my Ohio State video. I explain it uh, better in that. But uh, games in the green are games where Iowa State is pretty much for sure going to win. The spread will be a blowout, which is 20 or more points. And there's two of those, North Dakota and uh, Arkansas State. And games in the purple are games where I think Iowa State will be favored by about a touchdown, so at 6 to 9 points, and there's one of those, Cincinnati. And games in the pink are games where I think Iowa State will be favored by about a field goal, so that's 1 to 5 points, and there's five of those. Houston, Baylor, Central Florida, Texas Tech, and Kansas State. And uh, games in the gray are games where I think Iowa State will be an underdog by about a field goal. So that's 1 to 5 points. And uh, there's three of those: Iowa, West Virginia, and Kansas. And games in the yellow are games where I think Iowa State will be about a touchdown underdog, so 6 to 9 points, and there's one of those Utah. Uh, so North Dakota, Iowa State should be favored by like 40 points in that game. Then Arkansas State, the spread in that one may be in the 20s, probably the higher 20s. And Cincinnati, I think Iowa State should be favored by around 7 points in that game. And uh, Houston, uh, I would have that in the purple probably if it was a home game. Because Iowa State actually does have a pretty good home field advantage. It's a tough place to play at if you're their opponent. Uh, so I think Iowa State will be favored by 4 or 5 in this one. And then Baylor, that I had thought about putting in the purple, uh, but I think that Iowa State will probably be around a 5 point favorite in that game, and could be 6 or 7. And Central Florida, I think Iowa State will probably be about a 3-point favorite in that game, and then they'll probably be a 3 or 4 point favorite against Texas Tech. And I don't think they'd be favored in those though if they were road games. Mm, and Kansas State, because of home field advantage, I think Iowa State will probably be favored by a point. But I could really see that being a toss up, or even Kansas State being a small favorite. And Iowa, I'd say will probably be favored by about 3 points over Iowa State because of home field advantage, and I think they are a little better overall. Uh, and West Virginia will probably be favored by 3 or 4 mm, over Iowa State, and Kansas will probably be favored by about 3 over them, and Utah, I think they'll probably be about a 6 point favorite against Iowa State. So that will be it with this video, and please subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.